We're going live. Sorry about that, everybody. Hey, everybody. I just want to take this moment to thank you for sticking with us. Can you believe it? It's been 3 months since we've started F.L.O.W Presents. And this all began with my team talking about different things related to dating and said, hey, we should get people together and talk about it as well. And here we are. We got this space for people like you to share your experiences and your thoughts. Is it about experts or someone pontificating about what they think you should do with your life or what I should do with my life? Just people sharing their experiences, hoping to understand each other a little bit more. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Also want to say shout out to my team. I want to say thank you all for dedicating your time and your talents. You've seen some of them as panelists or moderators, and others have been behind the scene directing and helping moderate through YouTube or putting together slides and visuals or topic ideas. So thank you. Also, if you want to support the ministry, you see I'm wearing a F.L.O.W t-shirt. It's the Afro print Black Lives Matter t-shirt. If you're interested, all you have to do is email to flowpresents@gmail.com. Again, that is to flowpresents@gmail.com, and you can support the ministry and the movement. So thank you. Peace. Hey, everybody. I just want to take this moment. Yo, I hope you're excited for today's show because I know it's going to be amazing. I know the chat is going to be live. And guess what, guys? We've heard you. You've asked about it today after the show. Join us for the overflow. All right, you saw what I did there. 30 minutes extra of time where you can come into the chat room. We'll give you a minimum of 2 minutes to share your thoughts or your feelings. You can ask a panelist a question. That is the overflow from 6 to 6:30. If you're interested, all you got to do is email to flowpresents@gmail.com anytime during the show, and then we'll send you the Zoom invite and get you on there. So I look forward to seeing you guys, whoever wants to join us from 6 to 6:30 at the overflow.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another F.L.O.W Presents. My name is Araba and I will be your host for today's conversation. First and foremost, I want to welcome our guest panelist. Thank you guys so much for joining the conversation. I want to introduce you guys, so when I say your name, please wave. So today we have with us Vince. We have Gifty. We have Cherie. We have Avery. We have the Stewartson sisters. We have Wale. All right, guys. So today's conversation is going to be centered around colorism. Such a heavy topic. I know for me, it's triggering as a dark-skinned, melanated chocolate goddess that I am. I wasn't always confident in my skin tone. Growing up, I've been called all sorts of names, and I think a lot of us can relate to it. But we have a problem in our community, and so we want to hear your experiences first and foremost, and we kind of want to figure out where do some of these negative tropes come from. So I'm first going to start off by defining colorism before we jump into our conversation. Here it is. Colorism is defined as discrimination based on skin color, also known as shadeism. It's a form of prejudice or discrimination, usually from members of the same race, in which people are treated differently based on social implications from cultural meanings attached to skin color. Also, it is a practice of discrimination by which those with lighter skin tones are treated more favorably than those with darker skin. It is a product of racism in the US that upholds white beauty standards. So with all that being said, my first question to you guys is, what has been your personal experience with colorism? And if you feel you haven't experienced it personally, how have you seen colorism operate in the lives of those closest to you? I will start off with Cherie. And please remember to unmute yourselves.
Hi, Rabba. Growing up in the United States, and growing up, I guess, as you could say, dark skin or brown skin, I always remember the media just really growing up in the media, just like never seeing anyone that really reflected me, especially as a child, like no animation characters. If you saw like different cartoons or different kid-centered shows, there was never like a Black girl. And if she was Black, she didn't look like me. And so I think that absence of that visual or that representation was very evident that my beauty was not the standard beauty. It was not the norm beauty because it wasn't normalized in the media. So I think those are like my first initial experiences with colorism. Growing up, I think I kind of grew up in a household where that just wasn't really a big issue until I got to high school, and then you start to hear different comments, hear different terminology, red bone, yellow bone, light skin, good hair. You just start to hear all of these things, and that's like my journey from being a young person experiencing colorism.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll go to Avery. All right, so we might be having some technical difficulties with Avery. Until we get him back, I will move on to
the standard, or where I kind of got my views on like light-skinned women or dark-skinned women. But I don't think it was anything very direct. I think it was all just indirect. Like I remember saying before, as a kid growing up, I didn't really look at darker girls as being attractive. So even though I went to school with darker girls, they were all around me, I just thought that if there was a girl that I liked the light-skinned girl. But then before high school, I grew out of that. Like today, that's not a problem. But I just know as a kid, I just never really thought a dark-skinned girl could be attractive. So I don't know exactly, I don't know where to attribute that. I don't know if it was the music or hip hop. I just know that I was conditioned in that way growing up as a child. And I do know that, after learning, you hear about things like the brown paper bag test. I just know that like light-skinned Black people had some type of advantage, or you were just kind of more, if they had to choose a Black person, they were choosing the lighter Black person. And then we know about like house slaves versus, things like that. So I just know that, as I got older and I started to learn, I understood that being lighter came with some a little bit more opportunities or advantages.
Avery, I want to thank you for your honesty, especially when you share your experience about growing up and not viewing dark-skinned women as attractive. We definitely are going to delve deeper into that, along with Cherie, your comment about lack of representation. So thank you guys for your comments. I'm going to move on to Gifty.
Hi, so like Cherie, mainly in the media, you don't see a lot of dark-skinned women. And when you do see dark-skinned women, like in shows like Martin or The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, or some of my favorite childhood shows like A Different World, you see mainly dark-skinned women being trolled kind of, or being called ugly, and they're seen as like aggressive, more mannish and stuff like that. So automatically I'm like, man, that's how they must see me. And even as a kid, that's the type of perspective that I had. And then me growing up in the South Bronx, mainly in a Hispanic community, I went to a Hispanic school predominantly, and they too have colorist ideas, but to me, I guess when I was in elementary school, I was just like, maybe it's just a Spanish thing. But then transitioning over to high school, I found that, it wasn't just a Hispanic thing. It was, just a color thing, like where you have the light skins being seen as more, and then dark skins being seen as more masculine, more aggressive. And in New York, you had the whole era of the the light skin where like everyone was coveting one. And so you're just like, okay, definitely, I already know where I stand on the totem pole. And then on top of that, you want to go into African culture, which I'm also part of. I'm Ghanaian. And then you have the colorist ideology within our own culture, where it's just like, you know, the closer you are to whiteness, then the better you are. And so darker people are encouraged to lighten. So you have adults encouraging you to use, you know, lightening creams just so you can look better and more presentable and, you know, prettier for the world.
That's real. Thank you for speaking to the experience that we face within the African community. You know, Gifty, I'm Ghanaian as well. And it's true, bleaching is a huge phenomenon in African countries and Caribbean countries as well. And so that's an important topic that you brought up there. So I'm gonna move on to Vince. Please remember to unmute yourselves.
Hey, thank you. So for me, my experiences with colorism, it's been mostly through like entertainment and media. I think that's been the biggest thing that's kind of shaped my view when it comes to preference, I guess you could say. I know that for a long time, you know, I thought dark-skinned girls weren't probably on the same level as light-skinned girls. You know, I think that maybe that's something that I was fed as I was younger. But one thing that kind of happened in high school is that I kind of grew out of it. I think it was more of a sexual desire for dark-skinned girls. And it was less about, you know, some of the other reasons why I picked light-skinned girls before. So I think that kind of shifted because as you get older, you begin to kind of see older dark-skinned women in more sexual roles and more sexual, you know, presented that way. So I think that's what kind of, you know, spruced it up for me. So yeah, I struggle with it also.
Very honest as well. Thank you. We're gonna move on to the Stewartsons.
Hello. So I'm Alexis Stewartson. Everybody usually calls me Lexi. But for me, it definitely kind of started with my family because my family, for the most part, is all light skinned. And I was like the only darker shader. I'm not even really like dark, but like I am brown skin compared to them. And going to like family reunions and seeing all light skins and like I'm the only one who was like brown skin, it would be very interesting. And hearing like certain comments like, oh, like what part of the family are you from? Are you from like a different side, or like just lots of different stuff like that. And like going up to pick up my sister at like houses, like, are you the cousin? Are you like the babysitter? Are you like stuff like that? So it would be very interesting. Like even at church, like a lot of people wouldn't know that I was a part of the family that I was part of. And so it would be very interesting, but it was always definitely a learning process. And then also the same thing with like good hair and like bad hair and stuff like that. I would be attributed to have a lot of good hair, and for the longest I was just like, what is good hair? Like, why do you keep on saying that to me? And so just a lot of comments like that. But do you guys want to speak on your experience?
I've benefited from colorism because I'm lighter skin, and I've definitely noticed that people treat me different from my sister.
And I think it's just more about the comments of like, oh, like I would, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, like comments like, oh, like you're the darkest I would go, or like I would date you in the winter, not in the summer, because I tan super, like I tan a lot. And so comments like that, I know that like guys are seeing me differently than how they may see my darker skinned friends. And I think that's also really messed up.
And I think it's good that you talked about the over-sexualization of darker skinned women, because I think I realized that in high school as well. Like everyone was trying to get with a dark skinned girl, and they're like, "Yeah, we're just trying to do this and this." I'm like, "But what about her personality? Like, why don't you ever talk about that?" You know what I'm saying? So I thought it was very honest of you to talk about that.
I want to thank you guys for your response. I think you touched on something that's so important. That whole light skin privilege type of thing, where you see that lighter skinned women are often the desirables, quote unquote. So thank you guys for your comment. And lastly, Wale, what has been your direct experience with colorism?
Yeah, it was rough growing up, actually. I think, you know, I was growing up in the time before The Best Man came out, before Taye Diggs and Morris Chestnut were popular. So at that time, it was like Shamar Moore and other light-skinned dudes that was taking over the scene. And so, I mean, it was rough. I remember, you know, comments like, you know, if you turn the lights off, all we're going to see is your eyes and your teeth, you know, different things like that. And so, but I think, you know, I've always, you know, been attracted to dark-skinned women, but surprisingly, it was always, you know, before I got more confident and started going out and talking to who I wanted to talk to, it seemed like light-skinned women were always more, you know, aggressive when it came to the dating scene. And they would come and, you know, and try to, you know, talk to me. And so I think also another issue is I remember just being dark-skinned, I think people criminalized me more, you know, thought that I did certain things, or, you know, people be like, I know you smoke, you know, type of thing. And I wasn't smoking at the time. And so it was just a lot of things that were, you know, that were placed on me that were negative just because, you know, I was dark skinned. But I also think it helped out because being dark skinned, you're seen as a little bit more dangerous, I guess. And so, you know, people kind of, you know, thought twice before crossing you or before doing different things just because they thought you were more aggressive or, I guess, you know, more violent. So
a lot of you have touched on a lot of the negative narratives that exist within the Black community. And oftentimes we place these stereotypes on each other. And so I kind of want us to, we're not gonna completely solve the issue of colorism, but I wanna ask this question to you guys, okay? Because this phenomenon of colorism did not come out of anywhere, right? So my question to you is, do you think that colorism supports white supremacy? In other words, is there a correlation between colorism and white supremacy? And I'll go to Gifty first because I see her hand. Please unmute yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Colorism is just a subset of racism itself. It's basically its child, where you have the idea, like you said before, the closer you are to whiteness is, you know, the better you are seen. And if you look at it in historical context, you're going to look at how, like, you know, lighter skinned people or mulattoes at that time, as they used them, were able to buy houses if they were close to passing to white or they acted white. It was to the point where, like, if you, let's say you wanted to purchase land, they would actually observe you to observe your Blackness. And if you had any inkling of Blackness, that immediately nixed your chances of buying property, therefore moving up the social economic ladder. So it's definitely rooted in white supremacy. Is it in terms that, I mean, in racism, is it like white supremacy where it's just like white is right and nothing else? No, not necessarily, but it's definitely a subset of racism.
I agree with a lot of, oh, Avery, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm with Gifty. I think this kind of goes back to slavery as well. We might all be familiar with Willie Lynch. You know, it started there where he was like, you know, put the light slave versus the dark slave, and the old man versus the young man, the man versus the woman. So they've been trying to divide us since, you know, way back. I do think that it's like, in terms of white supremacy, I do feel maybe not anymore as much, but when light skins were in, light skins definitely did feel as if like they were supreme. I can probably say that. I would say for men now, Wale's right. Like it's kind of, I don't know, I think it's equal, but I do think that for men, darker men are in as well. Like, people love them some chocolate. Me and Vince, we try to tan as much as we can because yeah, but yeah, I would say light skins definitely have that white supremacy feel, or did at some point.
So okay, I'll go to Cherie, but I just want to quickly ask this. Actually, Cherie, you can go ahead and I'll ask this question.
Okay, I completely agree with the other panelists. I see colorism as internalized racism. And just like Gifty said, I call it's a direct child of white supremacy. And to put it just like she did in the historical context, we also have to think of like why it's become so prevalent, because if you look at like early Jim Crow or the Reconstruction era after slavery, but we were still practically slaves, but just free. And our future was bleak, not very many economic opportunities. You could still be lynched, still be killed. The whole advent of like passing as white, that really just, it didn't necessarily mean that you hated being Black, but it could mean your survival and like the survival of your lineage and just advancement for a better life. So I definitely think that we as the Black community, some of us have really guarded and protected the ideals of colorism, even though it directly does not benefit us.
Powerful statements there. Gifty? Did you have a response?
Yeah, I just wanted to add something really quickly that I forgot to add, is that even like, and I love that Cherie brought up the, and Avery brought up like Jim Crow era and William Lynch. We have seen it as recently as 2013-15, where you have research papers that have been done to show if there is a difference in the education level, earnings, and the ability to move up like the corporate ladder or like move up in a job, between skin tones, because they noticed that there was a huge complaint amongst darker skinned people that they weren't getting as many opportunities. And the studies actually did show that the lighter you were, white employers were more comfortable with who you are and more comfortable allowing you in your spaces. So they were more likely to actually move up the job stratosphere, and they were also able to make more money because of that. And then they also did a research between students, finding that darker skinned students, male or female, were more likely to be suspended from school than their lighter skinned counterparts. So it definitely still has bled into the way we do things now. And even if we look at, sororities and fraternities, how they even began, the AKAs and all of that, you have the light skin, the deltas, or being dark skinned, all of that plays into colorism. So it's definitely impacted our society, Black people in general, and it's definitely impacted how society treats us as well.
So Cherie and Gifty, you made some comments that touched on a lot of aspects of internalized racism, colorism. So I don't know if many of you have heard of the doll experiment, the brown paper bag test, things like that. So the doll experiment, for our watchers who are not aware of that, it's an experiment that has been done on children where they're sat before dolls of all hues of the Black race. And they are asked certain questions such as, which doll is the prettier doll and which doll is the nicer doll? And oftentimes the questions that were negative, I think a lot of the children would agree that the darker doll was attributed to these negative stereotypes. And you also see, like, even in beauty supply stores, we have aisles dedicated to bleaching creams, right? And the brown paper bag test, which was used by many sororities. A lot of us know the AKA sorority has been historic in using that test to make sure that someone of a certain hue is not able to enter in their organization. And so I wanted us to kind of touch on media and hip hop culture in today, because I think this speaks to a lot of the internalized racism and colorism that we're seeing. So rapper Kodak Black once made a statement that got a lot of flack, right? And I'll read you guys the statement and I want to ask your thoughts on it. And I will go to Vince first because I saw you did have your hand up. So he says, "I love African-American women, but I don't like my skin complexion. My complexion is too gutter. Light-skinned women are more sensitive. We can break them down more easy, and dark-skinned women are too tough." I want to ask, what are your initial thoughts on this comment?
I have my hand up for the last statement, so it's kind of unfair that you throw this at me first, but no, I'm playing. So I really feel like when I first hear that, and it kind of goes into what I was going to say before, that it's not that I think that colorism is always necessarily in the route of white supremacy. I think that it definitely is the originator of our division that happens in the Black community. And one aspect of it is that for some dark-skinned people, they believe that if you're not dark-skinned, you're not Black enough, you know what I mean? Or you're not of original, ancestry. So sometimes light skin could be you mixed with some things and things of that nature. So I feel like when a Kodak Black or when rappers or people make statements like, it's easier to manipulate a light-skinned girl than a dark-skinned girl, I think they're showing their true feelings on what they really, how they truly view Black women, and most importantly, dark-skinned women. I think that they see dark-skinned women as being strong, very strong-willed, strong empowerment as far as their views and stuff. And I think that they see a light-skinned girl as maybe someone more timid, more quiet, maybe a little bit more passive. So, and even too, I mean, if we're gonna be honest, they might call her sweeter, just because she's light-skinned. I know that many times when you're talking to a light-skinned girl, you might want to be a lot more softer with her than you are with a dark-skinned girl. So I think that when he says he doesn't like his own skin tone, I think it comes from a self-hate of how he feels about himself.
So I want to ask a follow-up question, and this is open to anyone. I definitely also want to hear from the men. So Wale and Avery, please feel free to join in as well. But do you think that colorism and misogyny intersect? So in relation to this question, does a woman's skin color impact the way that men treat them? I know, Vince, you talked a little bit about that, and I kind of want us to go a little.
I talked about Kodak.
Well, I'm just asking in general.
I'm playing.
Do you think that a woman's skin color kind of determines how certain men will treat them? And this is open to anyone. Gifty, I see your hand, and then we'll go to Wale.
Absolutely. Now we have to talk about misogynoir. Misogynoir is the term of misogyny against Black women, which is also underneath the umbrella of racism, which colorism also falls underneath misogynoir. That's actually the subset of racism that colorism falls underneath. And that is where you have the negative stereotypes of dark-skinned women, where they are seen as more masculine, you know, and it was basically an excuse for, you know, a lot of slave owners to rape to rape the Black female slaves, and then to also in the same breath make them work, you know, hard labor in the field, because it's just like, well, we are taking all the femininity away from you, and you are basically just a vessel at this point. So a lot of that, you see that in the sassy tropes of the Black woman, the sapphire trope, the Jezebel, where she's overly sexualized, of especially dark-skinned women, and then also like the Mammy, where she's nothing but a caregiver, and all femininity and all attractiveness have been stripped away from her. And a lot of Black men, because they also are seen as masculine and kind of like domineering and like aggressive, a lot of times they also take those same, especially dark-skinned men, or like people who see dark-skinned men as that, they take those same views and they kind of like place it onto dark-skinned women as well. And so now you have that misogyny where dark-skinned women are attributed to men and they're no longer seen as feminine. Therefore, when it comes to dark-skinned women feeling their feelings, they're seen as angry, having an attitude, aggressive, and all that type of stuff. So it's definitely related.
So you do say that there is some connection there.
Absolutely, yeah.
Wale, do you have any thoughts? And then we'll move next to the Stewartsons.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I feel your passion, sister. It's a shame that I think, you know, those comments from Kodak Black just show, you know, the sexism that is rampant in the Black community, where we view women as something to be controlled, something to be dominated, something to be tamed. It definitely, I feel like the darker skinned women do get the short end of the stick. As a matter of fact, you know, I work in a predominantly white environment, and just seeing, you know, some of the comments that happened, you know, with the darker skinned women from management, you know, you hear things like, you know, they might, you know, be passionate just like Gifty was, and like, oh, you know, and they start getting defensive, like, you know, what's going on here? Do we have a problem? And all she's doing is expressing herself. But let, you know, a white woman or a lighter skinned woman, you know, do that. And it's like, okay, you know, I understand, you know, and so you see those little nuances in the response. And I think, you know, Black women just get the short end of the stick, honestly. And the darker you are, you know, there's a lot of negative things that you just have to navigate through on a daily basis. And so I think, you know, we have to be more aware, especially as Black men, of these things, and make sure that we're not reflecting those same sexist views based on the skin color of women.
So you made some comments, and I think I want to tailor my question to any of the Stewartson sisters, because you guys mentioned receiving certain privileges due to your lighter skin. And I think, Wale, you touched on some important things. Have you found that because of your lighter skin, you are able to kind of navigate certain spaces a little bit easier than your darker skin counterparts? And if you would agree, then I would like you to speak to that.
I'm president of the Black Student Union at my school, and I literally watch people hear me speak and listen to me and absorb what I'm saying, and then like listen and understand. And then I'll have my darker skin counterparts who are also female. They'll speak and people automatically think they're angry. People automatically think they're being aggressive or that they're overreacting. Going back to what Kodak said with he can't control or break down a dark-skinned woman as much as he can with a light-skinned woman. I think the reason he's believing that is because dark-skinned women are constantly being attacked in the media, being attacked in their own home, being attacked in their churches, wherever they are. They have to build up a sense to protect themselves in a sense in which they can advocate for themselves. And so because they're doing that, now people are continuously, that cycle continues. People now are seeing them as aggressive because they're continuously speaking up for themselves, fighting for their own better rights. So I think that, yes, personally, I watch people listen to me and actually think about what I'm saying in an intellectual manner, whereas they have this block when it becomes a dark-skinned woman, specifically dark-skinned women. Because I think in general, men have this preconceived notion that women like to over-exaggerate and that we're being emotional. And so that, coupled with this preconceived notion that dark skins are more aggressive, it all couples together for them not to believe them, regardless of what they're saying. They could be saying that something's completely true and people will have a hard time understanding it just because of how they already think about them.
Absolutely.
I will also say that people have specifically told me that they can tame me. But they would never say that to any of my other friends who are darker skinned. And my other friends were like, oh, they would never say that to me. And it's true because like for such a long time, lighter skinned women have had to be quieter or have had to be, well, I wouldn't say had to, but they're always perceived as quieter, calmer, softer. And a lot of times that's because many of them have passed as white people. So they didn't want any trouble, if that makes sense. And so like, as soon as light skinned people start to speak up, they're like, wait a second, that's not how you are. Like, that's not who you're supposed to be. But at the same time, it's nothing compared to what people's preconceived notions are of dark-skinned women already. So
I want to thank you for that, sharing that experience. I think it's such an important part to this nuanced conversation, right? Because we understand how darker skinned women oftentimes, you know, we've heard on this panel before, get the harsher end of the stick, but oftentimes there are certain tropes attached to lighter skinned women. You're supposed to be the ones that behave. You're supposed to be the ones that listen, the ones that we can mold and break down. I want to ask you guys before I move on to Avery, because Avery, you did have your hand up. What effect or what impact mentally do these tropes against light-skinned women have on you personally and on lighter skinned women in general? Do you think it kind of causes lighter skinned women to act differently or yeah, like what impact?
If you're automatically being praised, it's hard for you to think, oh wait, you know what, I shouldn't be praised for being this way.
Exactly.
Like if you are automatically have, like, just like white people in general, they don't even realize they have a privilege, but they just keep on getting privileges handed to them. So you're not going to automatically think like, oh, I should even help making sure that someone else is speaking up. I should making sure someone else has this part, or someone else is being treated the same way I am. So there's a lot of light-skinned people that have benefited from colorism and they don't say anything about anything they're going through until maybe someone might call them out, and then all of a sudden they get kind of defensive because they're like, I've still been doing my hard work and everything, but they don't want to call out their privilege. But
then you also have I don't know a word for it, but I'm gonna go with pretty victimization, where they'll be like, well, people are teasing me because I'm pretty.
That's true.
And my parents have told me I'm pretty. Everyone tells me I'm pretty. And that's why people are teasing me, because they're jealous. But in reality, a lot of times they're really mean, rude, because they feel like they're better than other people because of their light skin nature.
Wow, that's a really real comment. I thank you for your candidness. Avery, I've been watching you and I know you have a lot to say, so go ahead.
No, I just wanted to comment on what was said before. I think Kodak Black got it wrong. I think for me and some of my friends, we actually look at light-skinned women as like too much, if anything. So I think when I got to the point where I realized that darker women were beautiful and they were very, if not equally or more attractive than the light-skinned woman, I cracked the code, because now there was less competition. All the guys were going for the light-skinned girls. Another thing now is in the age of social media, if they got all the followers and stuff like that, then we don't want them. We don't. Those are not the ones that we pursue. So I think I just want to kind of comment on that. I do think it's kind of, I guess I could see it in both ways, but at least for me and some of my friends, we don't kind of see it that way. I think light-skinned women are looked at as more as like they come with more personality. They come with more Instagram followers. They come with more, they've been getting all that attention their whole lives. So now we just have to compete. Like, it's just a lot more work, I think, for us. But I do think we have we're under the impression that a darker woman might be more humble and she might be more of a wife. And at least me and Vince think that, right, Vince? That's all I have.
Vince, I definitely want to get your input and Cherie's input before we move on to the next one. Go ahead, Vince.
Yeah, I wanted to definitely big up dark-skinned women, man. I feel like, light-skinned women are getting all of the love as a more superior, but I think that is kind of built in to our community and how we even talk about these conversations. Like, we can literally start it by saying that, I've been treated better because I'm light-skinned, or, I've had experiences where as a light-skinned it's been better. But I think even to the point of misogyny, the question that you asked before, that's why I think it's more of a personality thing now. I think in today's age, just because I don't see the gap being so drastic when you're talking about dark-skinned women to light-skinned women, at least in today's world, because I feel like, as Avery was saying a little bit to that, like, there are a lot of light-skinned women that, have that attitude, and what I'm saying, it will snap on you. I'm trying to say, like, if you're thinking that, if you're labeling dark-skinned women as aggressive or something of that nature, I'm trying to say, like, I definitely think that it's an equal playing field now. Like, you can find it in any color and race. But and I'm not trying to say that. Hold on. I do want to say something because I saw everybody raise their hand. Hold on. Let me clarify what I want to say. I know we're running out of time. Let me please clarify what I want to say.
Go ahead.
I'm not saying that they have an attitude or that every Black woman, comes with that. But what I am saying is that I don't believe in the stereotype that if you are with a dark-skinned woman or if you have a dark-skinned woman, you're going to get that attitude. And that doesn't exist in a light-skinned woman.
So Vince, quickly, and you guys can correct me. I did see a lot of hands go up, but I'm not sure that's necessarily the issue. I think a lot of it has to do with, there's automatically this negative stereotype associated with darker skin, right? And then we know with darker skin women, it's even worse. And a lot of us talked about in media representation, the Shanae's, the Shaniquas, the Latifahs, they're always darker skinned women. You don't too often see those characters, those like ghetto characters, attributed to lighter skinned women, right? So I think that's kind of like what we're alluding to a little bit, but I quickly wanted to get Cherie's comment, and then I'll give you a chance to speak before moving on to the next question. So Cherie, go ahead.
While I do appreciate Kodak Black's transparency and being honest about how he felt about his skin complexion, I really blame like this whole perpetuation of colorism on a lot of these figures in hip hop. And even to like give these labels of light-skinned women are this, dark-skinned women are this, it's just very disappointing, and it's unrealistic. I mean, even how Avery said like dark-skinned women are more humble, like, no. You have women of all shades that are, and I understand what he meant by that, but I still feel like that perpetuates the stereotype that light-skinned women are, they're upper echelon, they're always classy and, prissy, and the dark-skinned girls, like the home girl, the rough chick. And I feel like sometimes in this conversation, like we're still perpetuating these stereotypes. And I understand what he was trying to say, but it's like the whole issue with misogyny is that women are being objectified regardless of our complexion. And we're multifaceted, but either way, we're being seen as an object. And I think that is a big issue with me, especially as it relates to misogyny and Black men and colorism. So that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you for that comment. I want to definitely honor a lot of our opinions and comments. So I'm going to get Gifty and then go back to the Stewartsons really quickly before we move on to the next question. Gifty, go ahead.
Sheree beautifully said what I wanted to say, and the Stewart sisters also said, what I wanted to say earlier as well. And I just wanted to add that, in addition to the misogyny conversation, you have the expectation where they expect lighter skinned women to be more docile, more classy, the epitome of femininity. And because of that, sometimes, they get a lot of the classic misogyny, whereas you're a woman, you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to tend to the kids and all of that. And then at the same time, dark-skinned women who are seen as more masculine, but will still sleep with you, will still, have kids by you, but you're still supposed to do what you need to do as a woman. You need to carry my cross, do everything, brought the load. And it all stems back to, you know, slavery and this ideology that's kind of been indirectly ingrained in us, because if you're going generationally, everyone has practiced it. Therefore, a lot of us growing up, we're practicing what we're seeing our parents do, and they're doing what their grandparents have done. So, yeah.
And did you guys have a last comment to make? Go ahead.
I also disagree with the way Avery said, like, oh, light-skinned people have more followers, therefore it's hard to get them. It's not hard to get them. You just already said that dark-skinned women are low-hanging fruit. And that's not like that's already a preconceived notion. Like they're less than, like that's not okay. That's all I have to say.
Wait.
Oh yes.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Vince made a statement that I think it's important to acknowledge that he said that there was a level playing field nowadays between men and women, or light skins and dark skinned women. And I think that speaks a lot to your male privilege, because you don't see these interactions, or because you're the one initiating these interactions, that the playing field is not level romantically, sexually, in the academic field. It's just not level. And as a light-skinned woman walking throughout the world, I can see that I'm getting more opportunities because people view me as more approachable over a dark-skinned female. So, yeah.
And I also feel like since like colorism has been put to a forefront of many minds now, especially in the African American community, it is like we are able to recognize it more often, and we're kind of seeing it now and taking like the steps to like make sure that we're giving opportunities to those who are of darker skin, who might not get like the same type of values or the same type of privileges that we're getting. So I feel like we are definitely seeing it. And yes, Jenna said that it does show your privilege as a man.
So Avery, I'm gonna give you a chance to defend yourself really quickly if you want to. You're good? Okay.
No. So I was just gonna comment. I agree with you guys. I don't think that the field is level, especially when we talk about academically and in the professional setting. But I do think that with Vince and I, romantically, I think it should be separated, because I just think it's a different conversation. Because when does it become like privilege versus, or not privilege, but your preference versus colorism? Because just like women, or just like men, women say things like tall, dark, and handsome. When I was a little light-skinned boy growing up in the underprivileged life that I was living as a light-skinned little boy, I used to hear dark and tall, dark, and handsome. What if I'm not tall? What if I'm not dark? So I can't change my height and I can't change my skin color. But this is what, has been, in churches, or like women, you like what you like. So my thing, even with Kodak Black, to defend him just a little bit, I don't really listen to Kodak or agree with his opinions, but to just defend him, what if he just says like, what if he said that incorrectly, but what if he just likes light-skinned women? He just likes women who are dark, who are black, and have black features, but he rather his women, his wife, his girlfriend, be a little bit lighter. What if that's what he likes? But I would agree. You guys are right. It's not level, especially academically and professionally. Now, Vince, please help me, because
we have a lot of hands, and trust me, we are going to touch on all of this. Avery, your last comment leads me actually to our next question, and Wale, I do also want to hear from you as well. But I want to kind of go into the topic of dating and colorism now, because it seems like this keeps coming up, and so clearly we really need to talk about it. But Avery, you made some comments there. I'm a little worried about them, but we're gonna discuss them a little bit. But is there anything wrong with Black men having a preference dating a certain skin tone? We hear it all the time. That's just my preference. It's nothing about it doesn't have anything to do with discrimination or racism. I just prefer a lighter skin tone, and some even prefer darker skin as well. We don't hear it too often, but they say it. So I'm gonna go to Wale first, and then we'll go back around. But is there anything wrong with Black men having a preference?
See, I don't want to speak generally for other men. What I will say is that I think in my younger mind, I had a preference. My preference was actually dark-skinned women, because I was dark-skinned too. But as I grew up, I started to realize that, personality, values, morals, that was the most important thing. So wherever I could get those type of deeper themes, it didn't matter if it was dark skin, if it was light skin. Now I will say that I still only date Black people. So that is kind of what I just do. So that is my preference is Black women. But as far as light skin, dark skin, it doesn't matter as long as you have the morals and the values that I'm looking for in a partner.
Okay, we're gonna go to Gifty, Vince, then Cherie.
Okay, so when it comes to preference means that, yeah, you like this a little bit more, but like Wale said, when it comes to dating, when you see that the other person, somebody else who doesn't typically fit what you find physically attractive, but they have, not attractive, but like in terms of color, because this is colorism, but like if they don't have the color, like let's say light skin, you like light skinned women, you're like, I prefer light skinned women. And let's say you see a dark skinned woman, you actually do think she's physically attractive. She has a lot of the morals, a lot of the characteristics that you claim that you want, and you see that in her. She's intelligent, all of that. But at the end of the day, you go like, nah, I'm not gonna date her simply because she's dark skinned. That's a problem. That's not a preference. Then now you have a mandatory requirement for the woman you want to be with, if you're a man, to be light skinned. You know, so there's a difference between a mandatory requirement and a preference. If I like Snickers bar, I prefer Snickers bar. But like, let's say there's a Milky Way there, somebody gives it to me, but I also kind of like it, I'll take that as well if that's the only option that I have. Or like if, you know, that day I don't want a Snickers, I'm like, I'm gonna do something else. That's a preference. You prefer this, but if something else better comes along, I'll take that as well. That's what a preference is.
I've often noticed, I'm sorry, did I interrupt? Okay. I've often noticed some of my homeboys, right? They will tell me all the time, Araba, you're beautiful, gorgeous, skin melanin on point, right? But I never see them with someone on their arm that looks like me. So I'm just like, or there's something deeper rooted in there.
Everything together, like, why are you still single? I'm like, if I have everything together, damn, then date me, you know? Like, this is ridiculous, you know? But at the same time, I look at their history of their girlfriends and they all are kind of homogenous. They all look the same. And so like, to me, looking on the outskirts, I'm just kind of like, oh, okay, I peep. Because if I say like, oh, you only like light skin, but oh, that's what I prefer. No, that's your mandatory requirement. Like, that is what you only like. And my thing is, if that's what you want, just say that. Don't hide it underneath the guise of preference and all of that, because that's that flowery language that kind of like hides what the true meaning is. And it's kind of inauthentic to me. And I peep that and I'm automatically turned off a little bit.
Gotcha. We're going to go to Vince and then Cherie.
Yes, the Stewartson sisters. You know, if y'all got smoke, y'all can see me after this. Not playing, I'm joking with y'all. Nah, I'm totally playing. No, but I do want to say this about preference. I'm so happy we mentioned this, and that's where the conversation led. One, I agree with Avery, and I'm happy he brought this point up. I didn't know we were talking about this, but seeing how he mentioned it, this definitely is a two-way street. This is not just Black men, like, you know, have preferences and what they want to pick as far as light skin, dark skin. I believe that women also look at men, and as far as colors go, they have definitely a preference. And I think preference, I have to disagree a little bit with Gifty a little bit, is because, you know, Snickers look different than Twix. And I think, you know, the kind of, you know, not to be a certain kind of way, but just because it has chocolate and caramel in it, you know, you like a certain way that the chocolate and caramel is mixed. And I think, you know, some of them come with nuts in it. Some of them come, you know, plain with just almonds. And I'm just saying that I think when you say, yo, I have a preference, your preference might box you into looking at a certain type of woman, but I don't think that preference necessarily means that, yo, it's a code language for I only deal with certain kind of women. And I want to say this last thing about preference. I definitely think preference starts in the home. So I don't want to be too hard on Black men that choose a certain type of woman, because some people want a woman that looks like their mother. You know what I mean? Some people are thinking about babies. Some people are thinking about a lot of other different things that, you know, and I'm not, the Stevenson sisters, man.
No, but listen. Stewardson. I'm sorry, my fault. I apologize. Stewardson. I'm sorry, Cherie. Before I go to you, we need to unpack something that you hinted there. Yes. But you talked about, you know, some men want to date women that remind them of their mom or children or what have you. A lot of times, we often notice that their mom is just as dark as them, or darker. Or they have dark-skinned women, dark-skinned mothers and dark-skinned sisters. And so where does this random preference come from if you don't have too many lighter skinned women in your close circle? I just feel as though we have to kind of validate that there are a lot of men out there that they say they have these preferences, but when you see this trend of them constantly dating the same phenotypical women, something might be there. But that's just me. Cherie, I wanted to get your comment before we go, and I know Avery has a lot to say, so we'll go to Avery after.
Okay, where to even start, right? So, you were talking about preference versus,
like, is it okay for Black men to have a preference when it comes to dating?
So it's okay to have a preference, but I think in the Black community, we have to realize that we come from Africa, right? The root of our color is brown. Like, that's what it is. So for me to say that I like dark-skinned men, I mean, that's naturally what I look like. That's what I should be attracted to, right? So is it wrong? Is it wrong for, I mean, you know what, I think that you should like all Black people in the variety of skin tones that we come in, but I think that it's very natural to be attracted to who you are and what you look like. And so that's my take on that. And Gifty, I understood what she was saying, but when I was in the dating world, I didn't like, if a guy told me that he liked light-skinned girls, it was just like, don't even talk to me, you know, like, don't even waste my time. So that's kind of how I was, because it was like an indication of where this man's head is. So I never thought about that. Like, if you do like light-skinned women, then let me know. My thing was just like, keep it to yourself, bro, because I don't even want to have to look at you in a different viewpoint. So I think we also, when we talk about preference, and you kind of alluded to this, why is your preference for this color or this color? Is it because you want your children to come out a certain way? Is it because you think that if they come out a certain way that they're going to have different privileges or different advancements in their lives? So I think we have to ask ourselves those questions too.
Absolutely, Cherie. And just because I'm kind of interested in hearing a little bit more about your experience with you know, knowing that certain lighter skinned men, they voiced that they didn't want like people that look like you. But you had that response, and correct me if I'm wrong, of whatever, boy, I'm not checking for you anyway. But how do you think that impacts people who are not as strong, or I don't want to say the word strong, but who are not able to kind of like brush it off as easily?
And I'll clarify, I have never had a light-skinned guy say that they didn't like dark-skinned women. I've only heard it from brown-skinned and dark-skinned men. And I think that's very ironic. I think that's very telling. But I think for certain women, obviously that can be very damaging, because like I said, should be perfectly natural for you to find an attraction in your likeness. So I think it's kind of a slap in the face to a lot of women. It's like, you know, I put you on this pedestal. I think that you're brown skin, you're dark skin, your light skin is beautiful. Why can't you reciprocate that within me? And I think it can cause some issues with self-esteem and self-image, some of which we see today, with women trying to, you know, go into different extremes to change their aesthetic. And I think that is very unhealthy. It can become very unhealthy if you don't have a strong enough mind to combat that.
Gotcha. I want to go to Avery, and then Wally, I did see your hand, so we will go to you next before the follow-up question.
So I was trying to write everything down, but I would start by just saying that it's this whole colorism conversation is terrible for us, because like white people tan, you know, they want to be darker as well, you know, and we have some of, like, you know, the whole bleaching in the Black community and stuff like that. Like women especially, and even as Black men of like darker complexion, I don't know, media or whatever, they're taught to kind of like hate their skin color or like that, just not like it. So that's why you have some men, not me and Vince, but you have some men who would want a lighter woman or date lighter for whatever reason, because of kids or whatever. I don't know. But I wanted to just say something that the Stewartson sisters mentioned with the low hanging fruit. I didn't plant that tree. I don't know. I don't got nothing to do with the placement of the fruit. what I was trying to express is that light-skinned women who maybe get a lot of attention from social media or because of the media or because they're sexualized or they grow up realizing like I'm beautiful and I'm more beautiful than, I don't know, darker girls. They know that and they walk around and they interact with men with that understanding. So me as just a man talking to a lighter woman, I have to deal with the fact that she knows that she's bad. I'm sorry, it don't got nothing to do with me. But I'm not saying that a darker woman is not equally as bad. So if I approach a darker woman, she might not come with that feeling because of the trauma and the colorism and all the racism. She'd had to deal with a whole bunch of hatred or just not that attention that the light-skinned girl got growing up. So me approaching her, I'm not saying she's low-hanging fruit. If I was planting the tree, she'll be at the top. You know, she'll be at the top with the light-skinned girl. But because of society, she's low-hanging, like you said. But like I said, that don't got nothing to do with me. But last thing before I go, unpopular opinion, sometimes we just got to get on our feelings. You know, not that you a light skin or a dark skin, you just might not be attracted to a guy. And I think that that's what it comes down to.
Well, that's true too. I can't debate that. I really am interested in what the Stewartsons have to say about what your comment was. So before I go to you, Wale, I really just want to hear what they have to say.
What did he say, bro?
There was a lot.
As she said, it's not like who planted the roots, but you're still picking off the tree that's bad. Like if we want to go into analogies, like why would you still picking off that same tree? Like why don't you plant your own tree, whatever? But at the same time, like you can't just automatically, bruh, what did he say? I'm not gonna say I'm annoyed, but I'm just like
I'm annoyed.
Stop. So like you're basically saying that because you cannot deal with someone's confidence, you'd rather go with someone who has less confidence, like in who they are. You're like, oh,
I don't think that's what
he literally said, like the light skinned girl knows who she is, she's very pretty, and that's why I don't want to have to deal with her. I'd rather go with someone else. And I feel like that's preying on someone's weakness instead of actually like building them up and helping them get to the place where you think that other girl is that you don't want to deal with.
So I think,
personally, I don't think. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Robert can go.
I think a little bit of what he was alluding to was that darker skinned women may have more experience. We experience what is perceived to be more negative trauma than quote unquote what light skinned women have experienced. And so oftentimes he's conscious of these things when he's dating light skinned, dark skinned women. So it's a wrong assumption, but I think the assumption he's speaking about is the darker skinned woman might not be totally aware of her beauty, her power, what have you, versus a lighter skinned woman, she's lived a life of privilege. And so she's coming into stepping on the scene, knowing that, yeah, I'm bad in society's eyes.
And there's a difference.
But I think that's kind of where he was coming from.
There's a difference between confidence and believing that you're better than someone. You can believe, I think that's what he's saying, that a lot of, because of like the way that society has set up light-skinned women and their Eurocentric features and that they think they are better. A lot of light-skinned women believe that they are better than other women. Whereas I don't think he's trying to say that like, oh, he doesn't like them because they have too much confidence. I don't think that's what he's saying.
No,
that's not what I heard. I misunderstood what you said. My bad.
Okay. All right, Wale, we're gonna go to you before we move on to the next question. But thank you, girls.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think a lot of our perceptions are shaped by our environment, our exposure, and our experiences. And so when it comes to, I think we have to be aware of our unconscious bias, because a lot of times preference is driven by our unconscious bias, by the things that we've soaked in, like we were talking about media, different things like that. It shapes our thought process. It shapes the way that we view the world. Now, I did want to say, to defend my brothers just a little bit, it wasn't always easy for me being a dark-skinned man. There was definitely colorism for dark-skinned men, back in the day. Now, so, it's, dark men are beautiful, dark men are this, and, but there was a shift at one point where, light-skinned, dark-skinned women, from my experience, they always chased after that light-skinned, light-eyed, guy with the curly hair. And so, I think we just have to, kind of be more aware and listen to the other side. I think because sometimes we get a little defensive, where, when some things are hard to hear, these are other people's experiences. And so we got to validate them while we also bring our own. So I think to overcome this colorism conversation, there has to be a lot of active listening going on, and understanding, your unconscious bias and why what other people are saying are triggering you, or triggering defense mechanisms in you. And I think that will help us get to a level ground where we can actually hear and learn and grow from each other.
Okay. I want to read a question from the YouTube comments. The YouTube comments are on fire, by the way. But someone says, is preference more of an issue for men or for women? So I want to throw this question out to Gifty. Do you think it's more of an issue for men or for women?
I just want to know what they mean by issue, if they can clarify in there. Like, do they mean like it doesn't negatively affect women more than it does men?
I'm not sure. If you're listening in the YouTube comments, please try and clarify.
And then just real quick, I'm going to touch on what Vincent said about what I said about preference and the whole snicker thing. All I'm saying is that preference requires flexibility, right? And a lot of times when you talk to some people, I'm in the same camp as Cherie, by the way. Like, if you already told me you're not into dark-skinned women, I'm not wasting my time. Like, I'm not doing that. But I'm just saying that, you know, at the same time, I have to call some people out. I'm like, you know, don't sit there and say like, oh, I like all Black women, and then just date one type and then say like, oh, it's just my preference, you know, or like, you know, I just like a girl with curly loose hair that she could just whoop up in a bun and just go about her way all carefree and whatnot. You know, that doesn't require room for flexibility for when you see somebody else who doesn't exactly fit that exact box, you know, then you're automatically dismissing them because they don't fit that exact box. You know, that's what I mean by mandatory requirement. And then I'm gonna kind of answer from what I think the person was asking. I think preference, do I think it affects men more than women? It's a little bit different. Like, I personally think it affects women a little bit more, dark-skinned women a little bit more, because when it comes to colorism, dark-skinned women do have the shortest end of the stick. But I do think to some degree, like I think Avery has said before, that light-skinned men are definitely affected by it, because if we go back to misogyny, if you're and like associating femininity with light skin, then light-skinned men are seen as more feminine. So then when women want a masculine man, they're sitting here saying like, I want a dark-skinned man. He got to be dark, tall, handsome, and all of that, you know, and that it kind of does have a problem for that. But at the end of the day, you know, light-skinned men, that's, in terms of dating, that's kind of what I've noticed and why sometimes they don't get chosen and whatnot. But like with dark-skinned women, in terms of preferences, you know, again, it goes back to what I was saying, again, with misogyny, with the masculinization. She's seen as too much work, too much attitude, you know, like Kodak said, raggedy, or even earlier this week, 50 Cent and Lil Wayne talking about angry Black women. You know, it's a mess when it comes to it. And so like, it kind of gives the world a negative view, and other races even a negative view of what Black women are. And so if they themselves are looking to date Black women, they'd rather date not dark.
Vince, I'm gonna give you a chance to respond before we move on to the next question, because I saw that you had.
To answer that question, I think Black men have it the hardest. I think because of conversations like this. I think like, as a Black man, I think knowing that this conversation is happening more amongst women than it is men, you do understand that whatever decision or choice that you do make says a lot about you. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you pick a dark-skinned woman, you must, you know, like all the different stereotypes that we said that kind of comes with it, comes labeled on you as a man. And I think the same thing happens if you date a light-skinned woman. So I think, you know, men just have it as a hard time. I mean, I hate to defend the brothers, but I got to, you know what I'm saying? I feel like, you know, even to what you were saying about like the preference thing, like if I like dark skin, and I want to spend my last 48 seconds bigging up dark skin women, because I feel like you're giving me a bad rap when it comes to that. I got aunties who are dark skin. You know, I believe that, you know, it's an equal playing field. And that's why I was saying it's an equal playing field, because for men, it really could be a preference. It really could be, you know, a personality thing. It really could be who you vibe with. I think for men, it's a lot of have to do with respect and different other aspects. And when you are choosing who you want to be with, you know, the color of their skin could play a role, but it's all about what that person believed as far as when they were younger and believe in the hype. Because I know some dark-skinned women that are the most well-spoken, really nice, very beautiful, Christian, you know, just like Gifty. And then I know wonderful people like the Stewarts and sisters. And, you know, I know Sharice, you know what I'm saying? So there are definitely good people on both sides.
Cherie, I see you have your hand up. I want to get your intake.
Pretty quick. I think that it definitely affects women more so than men, only because of the way that the power structure is set up in dating. Men are usually the pursuers and women are on the receiving end. So if your preference is to date a certain woman, the woman that's not your preference is just going to be sitting around waiting for someone to pursue her, if that makes sense. So that's my thought.
Gotcha. I wanted to pose a different question because I know it came up a little bit. And so I will ask this first to the men on the panel. Wale, I'll start with you first, and then anyone can jump in at any point. So the trope of darker skinned men being more masculine and lighter skinned men being more feminine or perceived to be exists within today's society, right? Have you guys as men personally experienced any preferential treatment or negative treatment while dating? Do you think these tropes are false or true?
I'll say to some extent, I think they are true. So, for instance, because I'm darker skinned, I feel that, the women I've dated have been more comfortable, feeling more safe, I guess, with me when they go out. And I've heard, those type of things. I mean, but that could be attributed to personality, but I think it also, to skin color that, dark skinned men are a little rougher, when trouble comes, we might be able to handle things a little bit better. I think that is some of the perceptions. But to say it's hard for me to speak on that because, I can't get inside the other person's mind and speak on what their thoughts were of me while they were dating me. But I do think in today's day and age, where, like I said, the shift happened, I do think dark-skinned men do get some sort of preferential treatment now over our light-skinned brothers.
Okay. Does anyone have any comments to bounce off of that? Do you guys find this to be true or false? Avery, go ahead.
I just had a question. What do you agree with, Wale? You said you agree with what exactly that you said that you think is true. I just didn't know what exactly you thought was true.
That I think dark-skinned men get preferential treatment or probably viewed a little bit more favorably in today's day and age.
Okay, like a little bit more masculine. So I don't know. I think I don't know. Like I haven't had women tell me that. No, you know what? I would say this. I do think because of Drake and because of the I guess softer side of I guess light skin man. I don't know where it comes from, but I do think that might be the assumption. But I don't agree with it, and I don't think I don't know. I haven't had trouble, I guess, with dating when it comes to that. I would say that people have not been interested enough or not that interested or don't even take the chance to get to know me because of the fact that I might not be as dark as they want me to be. So I would say that, but I don't think that the whole like men being or light-skinned men being like more masculine. I don't hear that from, like I said, because of social media and Drake, they might say, oh, he's like a Drake kind of guy and say that I got a softer side. But other than that, yeah, I don't think that is a thing of like people. I know as men, they don't kind of look at me as a little bit softer. Maybe they do. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. But I'm not too sure. I would say this one thing though, it's challenging though to date now, especially because, women will want men to be softer. If I could talk about my personal experiences, and they want you to be a little bit more emotional. But then when you show that, then I'm the softie, or I'm too emotional, or I'm feminine, or not as masculine as my dark-skinned brother that doesn't talk, that's very stoic, that shows no emotion. But yet they still get to date the most beautiful Black women in the world. That's all I have.
So I asked this question because I think a lot in hip hop culture and media, we hear songs where, I've heard certain rap songs where it almost seems as if certain skin tones, and I'll say the lighter skin tone it's kind of conceptualized to be the weaker when they're in reference to talking about like as a man, how I operate as a man. And so I wanted to ask you guys, does this thing really exist? Is there this phenomenon of darker skinned men being more hyper masculinized, if that's even a word, and lighter skinned men having these weak narratives attributed to them. Like, is that a thing? I think we see it so much in hip hop culture. And Gifty, I see your hand up if you have a comment before we move on to the next question.
Yeah, I definitely think that it's a thing, and it's the weirdest thing. Like when it comes to dating, at least I'm just speaking from what I hear, people I know, and all of that. I've heard women say, you know, I want a dark-skinned man because, you know, he's the epitome of masculinity. And light-skinned men are like weak, or like, you know, he's too soft, he's sensitive, blah, blah, blah. But like Avery said, at the same time, they want a little bit of that in the darker skinned men, but they don't want all of it. So I know women who have not dated light-skinned men because of that. And then, but it's crazy because it kind of works against both dark-skinned and light-skinned men, because when it comes to society, dark-skinned men are seen as more aggressive, and they're actually arrested more and imprisoned more than light-skinned men, and they have less opportunity when it comes to jobs and stuff like that. And then light-skinned men, you know, are seen as like, you know, closer to whiteness, so they're given more opportunities. But it seems like, you know, at least from people I've heard, and even some white women, they want a dark-skinned man because to them that is masculine. But at the same time, they fear dark-skinned men. Strange.
It's a weird concept, but it's so true. I'm gonna go to the Stewartsons because I saw you guys had your hand up.
I have my hand up. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to make a comment because she brought up the fact that light-skinned men are given more opportunities in an economic sense and academic sense. And I think that a lot of women, I think women of all races attribute darker skin to hoods, violence, and like things that they find attractive, like, oh, I want my man to fight for me, I want my man to be a little bit of hood, and they attribute darker skin to those stereotypes. And I think that also goes along with like, I think that comes along with the fact that there's a lot more, I don't know how to say this correctly, but I think because light skins or dark skins are given less economic opportunity, that's one of the reasons we continuously see or people attribute darker skin to the hoods, because they're left in the hood because they're not given these opportunities to have money and to get out. I hope that didn't sound offensive.
Also, just like like fetishizing Black men in general is something that women of all races do.
Yeah.
Yes.
And like sometimes even when I might think someone's beautiful, I'm like, why am I thinking they're beautiful? Is this because like someone has said like maybe fetishize that person, or is it because I just naturally think they're beautiful? So I think the fetishization is it fetishized?
Fetishizing, yeah.
You know what I mean? Whatever it is, I think that plays a big role in like choosing a dark-skinned person versus a light-skinned person.
Gotcha. Cherie? Thank you guys.
I agree with both sentiments. I think a lot of it goes back to just the propaganda that was embedded in our minds like hundreds of years ago with, you know, blackface and minstrel shows, and just always depicting the Black man as like the criminal trying to, you know, do something to rape white women, or just being like this, you know, deviant character. And I think it's become kind of a positive negative because it's just been turned into, oh, like dark-skinned men are like bad boys or something like that, which I don't believe is true, but that's how I think it's kind of evolved from in our history.
Gotcha. Quickly, I wanted to talk about something that I think cannot be left out of this conversation of colorism, and it is the phenomenon of featurism. If you guys don't know what it is, I have that definition for you, and I'm going to read it before we delve into the questions. So featurism is a discrimination based on someone's physical features, typically Afrocentric features, which includes nose, lips, eyes, and favoritism of the Western phenotype. So now that I've defined it, I think a lot of you guys have seen this. We've seen it in the media. We've seen it with certain celebrities. What first comes to mind is I think of Jay-Z. A lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Hate he's received is because of how big his nose is, how big his lips are. And I remember when Blue Ivy, Beyonce's daughter, was first born, a lot of people were enraged, like disappointed that she didn't have the sleek, narrow features that Beyonce has. And so I think we've seen featurism operate in such ugly ways in our community, but it's a real thing, it exists. And so I want to ask you guys this question. Have you ever been insecure about your physical features? And if so, where do you believe those insecurities stem from? What is that rooted in? And I will start with Vince, and then we will go to Avery, and then the Stewartsons.
You gotta stop starting with me with all the bad questions, please. Nah. So features, I'm sorry, really quick, you run it back one more time about the features? I'll make sure I say the right thing. Yes, ma'am.
Should I read the description?
No, just the question as far as what you asking.
The question is, have you ever been insecure about your physical features? And if so, where do you think those insecurities stem from? I know it's a loaded question, but we wanna get some real personal experiences here.
Well, no, because I'm a Black man and this is 2020, so I love everything about myself. You know, Black Lives Matter. I wake up every day happy with myself. No, but you know what's really actually funny is that I've been a heavy set person like most of my life, and it's like, you know, it was never a bad thing, because it's like if you're big, it's kind of like you're funny, you know what I'm saying, and those things can kind of connect with certain stuff. So you kind of look at those kind of features, or you know, that's something that you can probably control. But you know, even if you're like with your hair, you know, I mean, I went to all white school, so kind of like having the mini afro, that's something I've always had as a look, have always kind of been questioned as an unprofessional, you know, or even from dressing and different things like that. You kind of look at it as like an urban person. But I think Black people, when they do stuff, or when we like twist our hair, or when we get braids, or, you know, if, as you said, your lips are a little bit bigger, even if your lips are darker. I know Wall was talking about that, like people asking you, do you smoke and different things like that. Like there are a lot of features that Black people have that are kind of deemed as being unprofessional or not, you know, up to par. And I know I've suffered from things like that, you know, with wondering how I should have my hair in a job interview. You know, even when you're talking to a female, you know, as a light-skinned brother, you got to have a nice taper fade, you know what I'm saying? So you don't want to be looking too crazy. So I think things like that have been issues I've seen with features.
Yeah, I think for me personally, just to insert one of my experiences real quick, I remember going for a job interview and I had my afro out. And it's so funny because before I went into the interview to meet with the director, one of I think she was working at the front desk or something. I'm not sure what she was. She was either biracial or something. She was lighter skinned, but I don't think she was white. She mentioned to me, she just said, wow, your hair is really, really big. And I remember feeling uncomfortable because she kept saying it, right? And so she said, I'm not sure if this is going to be offensive to you, but yeah, we don't really wear our hair like that in this office. And after that, I never wore my afro to an interview again. I always made sure I had my straight hair because I was always self-conscious of, will I get this job if I go in with my natural self? And so, yeah, I think oftentimes we suffer with these insecurities because we've been policed. They had to enact the Crown Act, which makes it illegal for employers to discriminate against Black people who have Afro-textured hair. It's a real thing. And so I wanted to go to Avery and then the Stewartsons.
I think, yeah, like what you guys said, I think it's mostly hair, maybe for men, and like beards as well. I've learned that the white man beard might be a little bit more acceptable in the workplace versus the Black man's beard, just because it might feel and grow a little bit differently. But I've seen guys like white men who have like these full beards, but no one's ever pressed them about like cutting it, like working in healthcare. They had no problem or no conversations about, oh, you might have to cut your beard. But for like, I've been told a couple of times, like, you know, your beard can't grow that high, can't grow that long and things like that. So where does it come from? It's just like the white standard of what is professional and what is not. I would also just kind of mention when it comes to like feeling insecure, maybe with like, just as a Black man in the workplace, we're not there often, as you guys mentioned. So when we do get there, oftentimes we're surrounded by white people. So literally everything is like, just our whole being is kind of like on, you know, we're a little insecure about that. So if you're a little bit taller, like you might just stand out. And I know when I go to work, I'm not that tall, but when I go to work, I stand out often. So I constantly have to like shrink myself and maybe not speak too loud, or, you know, just not draw too much attention to myself because I'm already just like I already draw attention just by default, just because of the way I look. So I have to just be aware of like literally every action and everything that I say or do while I'm at work. So I think, but that's just like the white person standard of professionalism.
Gotcha. The Stewartsons, really quickly.
I mean, going back to Blue Ivy and like Jay-Z's daughter, her and North are very similar skin tones, but because Blue Ivy has these Afrocentric features that she inherited from her father, she's constantly berated in the media, and people think it's like okay to call her ugly and all types of, oh, go comb her hair. And I think that's a prime example of featurism because they are very, very similar skin tones. Did you guys have anything to say?
Okay, so for me, this has definitely been a big point for me because many times I have attributed to have good hair, and I'm constantly trying to tell people that good hair is hair that grows out of your hair and it's healthy, you know, and it's like it's not like a certain curl pattern, it's not like a certain texture or anything like that. So constantly I'm having to go with that, and people are always asking me like, what's my ethnicity because of my hair. They're like, oh my gosh, your hair's like so big, it's so curly, oh, like what's going on. And I definitely had the same I don't know if it's necessarily been an issue because I personally haven't seen it. Well, yes, I have, but I see kind of like the same thing as going into an interview because I have a huge afro, and I'm always wearing it. And so like when people are constantly going like, oh, like how'd you get it that big, or why is it up so high, like those types of questions, sometimes it does make me feel uncomfortable. But I feel like also because of the era that I was like born in and the way I was all the people who I've like come up around, it's very, for me, it's like I kind of explain it like, oh, like this is what the situation is, like not the situation, but this is what it is, like this is my hair, this is, yeah, like, yeah. So I don't know. And then also with different features, sometimes I get a little bit insecure because my lips are a little bit smaller, but and my hips are, I have dips, I don't really have, you know, curves. So that is the thing, that too.
I think also we've seen that a lot of dark-skinned males, if they have straighter noses or smaller lips, all of a sudden they're in the model industry. I think that's a really big thing. Like you have to realize that so many people who are dark-skinned, like if they have, I guess, Eurocentric features, like the smaller noses, or like, I don't know if like really chiseled jawlines is a white thing, but that's also a really big thing that people have always like attributed to like beauty. So I don't really know about where that goes, but I also know like just like featurism for dark skinned people is very serious in the model industry.
Sorry about the time limit.
It's okay, but I think you spoke to something very important. Oftentimes we notice that the person might be darker skinned, but if they have those Western phenotypes, sometimes they can kind of permeate certain spaces where they're allowed to be glorified. So yeah, that's very real. I'm gonna go to Gifty before we make our last comments.
I agree with everything everyone said. I know for me personally, it was more so my backside. I do have hips and I do have a relatively big butt for my frame. So I know like even going into interviews, like I would spend weeks looking for the right outfit so that I'm not seen as overly sexual, because no matter what I wear, it's going to be tighter, you know, even if it is in my size. So like I really go through a lot thinking, should I wear a skirt? Should I wear pants? Should I wear those cut pants? Because I mean, those, you know, 3/4 length pants, because maybe it won't, you know, draw too much attention, or will it draw too much attention? Then I have to go find a tailor to try to loosen everything up in, you know, certain spots. And like, even like, should I add a blazer so that I can cover up, my behind, because it makes me feel, you know, conscious.
Yeah, right.
When I'm going to like things like an interview, like even for my med school interview, I had to think about it for like a month to finally settle on what do I need to wear so that I'm not drawing attention to myself.
Gotcha. Wale, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was just going to share a quick experience. I think growing up, you know, definitely my hair. So I used to always keep my hair cut low because, you know, I was always seen as nappy. I do appreciate Lil Wayne shouting out Nigerian hair in a Millie song, because that kind of put us on the map a little bit. But also, I think my nose as well, you know, has been a negative thing. And these negative things usually, from my experience, came from other Black people. But my lips were always accepted, you know, because people like, you know, full lips. And so I think, you know, those different features had, you know, different responses.
Thank you. So we've had an amazing discussion so far. So much has been unpacked, and yet so much is left to unpack. But I want to thank you guys so much for contributing your perspectives and views on colorism. Before we start inviting people to come on to our overflow, I wanted to ask you guys one last question, and please try and answer in 30 seconds or less for the sake of time. But going forward in our individual lives, how do we make sure that we are helping in contributing to conversations centered around colorism, and making it not such a taboo thing? What are your suggestions of how we can approach this issue and approach this topic and hopefully one day eradicate it? Maybe that's a crazy question. I don't think it will ever truly be gone, but I think we can make steps in the right direction towards where we can start to heal ourselves. So what are your personal recommendations? And please try and answer in 30 seconds or less. And I will start with Cherie.
I think much work has already been done with the movements of like Black Girl Magic, Melanin Magic, all of these positive movements that go to, you know, and affirm dark skin. But I think we really have to check ourselves, check our minds, check our thoughts, check our relatives if they say something offhand, whether it benefits us or not. I also think that we have to eradicate these labels of dark skin and light skin because they're old, they're divisive. I think we really need to look deep and figure out what our brown is really called, just to, you know, stop putting ourselves in these two buckets. And those are my suggestions.
Gotta. We'll go to Avery.
I think we just gotta, like, I'm with Cherie, we gotta come up with some new definitions. We gotta decriminalize just Black as a whole, whether it's the Black man or the Black woman. We just gotta let go of all those things. And then just in our social settings, when we have opportunities to correct people or just introduce new perspectives, you know, if you're sitting around with the guys and you're looking at, I don't know what guys look at, or if you're talking about women or you're showing like some girls on Instagram, show a dark skinned Instagram model for a change.
Gotcha. Vince?
Yeah, I want to speak to my brothers, you know, to the men strictly. Definitely the narrative has to change, man. I mean, I feel we need to do our part to love on everyone. I think, you know, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, and I think we need to truly behold a whole person of a Black woman. I feel like the different shades, the different body sizes, their backgrounds, these are all just external things, but we really need to get to the heart. And I think no one has a better heart than Black women. So I think, you know, we need to just put aside a lot of our pride, a lot of things that have been said. And the biggest thing I do want to say, this last thing, is that, you know, everything from history, from slavery, is all stories of what's being passed down. So I feel like if we change the story and we start passing it down to our sons, this is why I was saying about the even playing field. We need to just continue to progress that Black is beautiful, all shades of Black are beautiful, and continue to just promote that as a brand and as a people, especially us men.
Thank you. Wale?
Yeah, I would just add, so I agree that I think, you know, the labels that we put on each other drive our thoughts and our perceptions. And so eliminating some of those labels is definitely a way. But I think, you know, one of the issues that people have in general is listening. And I want to emphasize the importance of listening to the emotion and not necessarily the words behind, because when you see the passion of people talking about their experience, that should tell you that there's something valid in their experience that needs to be acknowledged. And I think, you know, gaining better listening skills will help us eliminate some of these issues we're having.
Absolutely. Gifty?
I think for me, I'm definitely with Wale and I'm with Cherie. Wale with the listening and Cherie with the checking ourselves. And I think to practically check ourselves, we need to sit down and write, you know, all the biases that we have when it comes to color and stuff like that. You know, write it down so that we can see it. It's going to be a little bit painful. It's going to be a little bit hard. And like those, and try to find where you got, try to do a deep dive into like, where did I get this idea from? Is it something that I just made up, or is it my personal experience, or is it something that I've been told? And And if you find that it is something that, you know, you've been told but you have no basis in and stuff like that, do some research, you know, learn and, you know, open the avenues of your minds to new information. And I definitely think that'll be helpful. And then don't be afraid to educate those people on what you've learned when you hear that they too have had some problematic, you know, thoughts and conversation, and definitely just see where their mind is to have that.
Absolutely, thank you. And lastly, the Stewartsons.
I personally think that we all just really need to educate ourselves more and have these certain conversations, because a lot of times people don't really understand what they're doing or see the actions that they have and how it affects others until it's being told to them, or they like it's being put to the forefront. So having these conversations and correcting people when they do talk on these certain issues in a way that, I don't know how to say it.
Also, if you feel like your voice is oversaturated in the media, regardless, I mean, if you're light skin or dark skin, if you feel like as a light skin person your voice is already oversaturated in media, use the attention that people are giving you. I was not saying that. Use the attention that people are giving you to uplift some of our darker skin people with darker skin, their voices, because what they have to say is completely valid.
Thank you for that. I want to say thank you to my panelists once again. To my YouTube family, do not leave. We want to hear from you. We've been talking amongst ourselves and talking at you, but we want you to join in the conversation. So if you want to join our overflow chat, please email us at 2flowpresents@gmail.com. You can join the Zoom right now and we will chat and have a discussion with you. So I want to encourage anyone who has a thought on colorism, if you were triggered, if you were inspired, if you came in thinking one way and left thinking another way, we want to hear from you. So please do email us and you can join in the Zoom right now. So let's go. Hi, welcome.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Diane.
Hi. I just wanted to add that from listening to this conversation, it feels like we're all hurting, both Black men, both Black women, both light skin and dark skin. And I just wanted to say, I feel like the end of the conversation where you guys are looking at what we can do to make this better, I feel like that's more of what we should be talking about. And I feel like we should also be careful of the things that we say, like to Avery, for example, the things that you were saying, it kind of hurts light-skinned people. And we're not trying to make Black people become the top. We're trying to be equal. So if we say stuff like, you know, the dark-skinned woman, we're just trying to, it's easier, they seem more humble and stuff like that. A few years from now, we're gonna have to be having the same conversation about how to make the light-skinned women feel better. You know, because then what if the dark-skinned women, we go up there and we're at the top now, and you know, boom, we're all feeling great, but then the lighter skinned women now are feeling down. And if we want the Black community to be at a place where we're all equal and we all have the same mental, we have to talk in a way that we're all making each other equal and not putting it
to level the playing field a little bit, Diana.
Right.
Okay. Right. So I want to say welcome to everyone who joined on. I see Rob and Susan, I see Simone, I see Don, I see Avana Henry. I want to extend the conversation. If you guys have a comment, a question, a rebuttal, whatever, please do use the raise hand feature. If not, you could just raise your hand and we will get to you. But does anyone have a comment responding to what Diana just said?
Yes, I do. I'm gonna jump on. Diana, that was dope. This is our future leader. I mean, Diana does everything from Sabbath School to F.L.O.W Presents. Just shout out to you, Black woman. I think her point is something that I've been pushing a lot. This kind of, we have been forced as oppressed people to find within our oppression a measure of power and success. And I think that has often looked like us putting down other groups within our community. And that has done nothing to support us and push us going further. And it is the result of oppression. Like, it's the result of being so far down that any opportunity to be up, we look for it, we push it, which includes at times pushing down the Black woman, the darker skinned Black woman, or pushing down the lighter skinned man or the darker skinned man. I love what everyone said, and I think it's so important at this time to make sure that we are debunking the myths, that we are finding terms like just chocolate. Like, I don't even like the word Black anymore, because Black is a shade. As an artist, Black is a shade, it's not a color. I'm all about being chocolate. I'm all about being brown skin, and finding the time to listen to everyone and hearing the hurt. Like, for so long, I think we've been upset with light skinned people. I'll say it for me. I love my chocolate now. I love my thick lips now. But I felt when I was in high school and younger, just like Wale said, it was my light skinned brothers that were getting on the love. It was the Michael Ealy looking Dougs that were getting on that love. And until somebody told me that my beautiful lips are great for everything, all the things that are important for lips to be used for, and just being loved in my dark skin and beautiful skin. So I really think it's important for us to begin doing what Cherie said, which is embracing our complexions, embracing our community as a whole. Everyone's hurting in some way, right? Everyone's hurting in some way. So the house slave, they got abused and raped just a little bit less or more than the field slave, but we all still. So let's remember to support our community as a whole.
Okay, thank you for your comment, Rob. Gifty, you have your hand up.
I do not know what that raise hand little button is, so I'm just gonna raise my hand. But Diana and Rob, I definitely hear what you're saying, and that we definitely have to be careful with, in uplifting, the group, like especially in this term of colorism, like dark skinned men and dark skinned women, in uplifting them. We're not tearing down, light-skinned people. But at the same time, I just want us to note that it's almost sounding a little bit Terry Crews-ish, where it's kind of like, if you are in power, if you are the person that is seen at the top, you kind of have to do the work to dismantle the oppression of those at the bottom. It's a little bit important. So that's why I do understand a little bit sometimes where Avery was coming from. He may not have articulated it properly, but I definitely do understand what he was saying, because it is your job, if you're at the top, to help bring and check everybody else, bring those at the bottom up, so that we can be at the even playing field. It's kind of like with racism, white people have to do their job to kind of check the privilege of other white people. You cannot leave it to Black people to kind of brunt that. That's their job. Do better. It's kind of like that. And I don't want to say it like you guys are wrong, because I do definitely agree with some of what you're saying. I just want to note that, that little point.
Okay.
So I'd like to clarify, Rob, if I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
That my point doesn't negate the work that anyone with privilege and opportunity has. I think the therapist, and I don't need to qualify. Me, I'm always mindful that everyone's hurting in some capacity, so I can do that work while being mindful of the hurt that exists. And so I agree with you. I know there are privileges and power that I have as a Black man, though it may be less than the white man, it's definitely more than the Black woman, for example. So there is active work that I need to do to help tear that down. I just need to bring to light, and I love what Diana said, is just being mindful of how we do so, the language and the energy to which and where we put that energy. Because I think it was Wale that was talking about how we all have some, unconscious biases, right? All things that influence this. And we all have levels of hurt that also influence our activism in some way, And I think that's just what I'm being mindful as, while taking everything you said just now, and I really want to be clear about that. There is work that I know I need to do as a Black man, with the power and privilege that I'm afforded, to make sure that I'm mindful of my Black queens, and the community, period, overall, knowing that within that is a present subgroup of darker skinned Black women that we need to make sure are elevated to a point of equality for everyone.
Well, I think I'm hearing that, those with privilege have a duty and a responsibility to utilize that privilege in order to kind of help to equalize the playing field. But in equalizing the playing field, we have to also be mindful that we don't lower a group while we're doing it simultaneously. Am I correct? Okay, that's valid. Does anyone have another comment? I see a whole lot of people have jumped on. I'm interested in hearing what you guys have to say. I want to go to Pierre. Pierre, you and I have had talks about colorism a lot, and so what have you been feeling watching what we've been discussing? What have been your initial thoughts?
I think that people have made some excellent contributions to what we've been talking about, and it's definitely a difficult thing to tackle. I know that you and I were talking about the source of colorism and the basis behind it, and it definitely is rooted in a sense of the hate that we internalize, aka racism, self-racism, or racism directed at self, as well as the racism that we see in culture and media. For me, that was one thing in particular that that stuck out to me. And I asked somebody in the chat actually, and I was thinking about this. Some of you guys know me. I want to tackle things. I'm a action person. I want to see how can we actually change this for the future. I've always, even when I was younger, realized, just because I'm dark, I'm the darkest one in my family, and my family isn't necessarily even all that light, but I've always felt that colorism thing, and I'm like, how do I deal with this? And the best thing that I could come up with is, when I have kids, teach them something different. But how can we actually do something and change this narrative going forward actively? That's the thing that's been kind of going around in my mind.
Gotcha. Gabby, Simone, who else? I see a lot of people on here.
Oh, there's a hand raised. I'm sorry, Araba, I apologize. Don has his hand up.
Thank you.
I'm gonna make you co-host. My apologies.
Okay. So Don, if you have your hand, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Just in my experience, I mean, I've been accused of, oh, you only like light-skinned women so when I answered in the chat, I was coming from my experience that I didn't have that basis or thought process. If I was talking to you, I was attracted to you, period. So there's no reason to bring up, oh, well, you like light-skinned people. So in my thought process, that was maybe a bias that was created by media and a lot of the stuff that we're surrounded by. If we're surrounded that light skin is this, light skin is that, and yes, I may have dated somebody lighter, but that doesn't mean that I'm just open to people. It doesn't mean that I have, and yes, there may be a preference, but I prefer to have more similarities. I was just more open. Being West Indian, I have white in my family. I know some of my family have married white, so I'm open. And I don't want to sound like the guy who's saying, well, I have white friends, but I mean, I just try to treat people as a person, period, in my interactions.
Judging by some reactions, I think you do. No, I'm just joking. Gabby, what do you have to say? You just raised your hand. Oh, can you unmute yourself?
Can you guys hear me? Yeah, you can hear me? Okay, yeah, I wanted to speak to that, being West Indian and just the different pictures that are painted in regards to it. And I shared in the chat that growing up, it was reinforced, at least for me, in my experience being West Indian, that being lighter was better. Having looser hair was better. Being mixed was better. And sometimes we don't, or we're not even conscious of the fact that we are gravitating to these latent agendas, so to speak, that have been put into our minds, drilled into our minds. Even without choosing, we might believe being lighter is better, because that's just what you were taught, or that was the culture, so to speak. Personally, I think this conversation is just really important. Out of my 3 siblings, there's 4 of us. I'm the lightest, second to my oldest brother, and then my sister is, people would consider her dark skinned, and she's older than me. This is my sister. I look up to my older sister, and I want to be like her. And you know, there are just certain things that she would say to me, because you know we're both nurses. She would say things like, "Well, you know, you're gonna have it easier in the job. because you're lighter skinned, or she'll try to prepare me for certain things that she had experienced at work that might happen to me, or might say it might not happen to you that much because you're lighter skinned. And I mean, these things are real. They do affect you in a certain way. I do want to say that ultimately I chose to go against this theory that lighter is better. I mean, look at my husband. He's a glorious chocolate man, okay? And since I was younger, I always felt like that doesn't make any sense. That's stupid. Like, why could people are telling me I'm lighter? That doesn't mean I'm better than so-and-so. And I think it's important to be conscious and actively work against these types of things, because ultimately it's just tearing us apart.
I have a question to Gabby, just as a follow-up, because, and I'm sorry, I do see the hands raised up, but I quickly just want to go back to her. I think, you mentioning that this is a facet of West Indian culture. It's the same with African culture as well. And you growing up and being told that your lighter skin you'd have it easier. Do you think that, the people that you were raised by, and if you don't want to share, you don't have to share, but the people that you were raised by, family members and etc., did they personally tell you or make sure that you were conscious of the fact that you being lighter skin, you'd be able to do things that other skin tones wouldn't do? Did they make you aware of like certain privileges that lighter skinned people might have? Like, is that a thing?
I don't think it was directly stated, but it's definitely implied, just by the whole generalization that being lighter is better, or more beautiful, or more accepted. So while the statements may not have been direct, it would have been perfectly reasonable to come to that conclusion.
Gotcha. Simone, you have your hand raised. I'm going to go to Simone, then Avery.
Yes, just listening to what Gabby was saying about the whole issue of light skin and darker complexion, and coming from more specifically a Jamaican background for myself, and going to your question, Rob, about if family basically perpetuated those stereotypes. I'm thankful that my parents did not do that for me, but they made me very aware of it. So it's like, look, people will say lighter skin is better, is better, that upward mobility. You want to move up in society, you marry somebody lighter, but we don't subscribe to that in this family. My real first interaction with that, because it was when I was living in Jamaica, when I was going to school. On weekends, I'd go and visit my grandmother. I have to take public transportation. The guys at the bus park, they would call me Browning, and I'm like, I am not Browning. Like, I'm not that light. But in me being Browning, that meant that they would save me a seat at the front of the bus, right? That meant, like, if they saw me coming, they would carry my bag for me to the bus. So there were
lighter skin?
Lighter, yeah.
Oh, gotcha. Oh, I didn't know that.
Okay. Yeah, right. So it had its benefits, so to speak. When it comes to hair, that's a whole other story. If anybody knows me, my hair has changed throughout the years, but I've never been stuck in, I love my natural hair. I've had dreads, I've had it permed. That doesn't work for me because I'm too lazy. But I'm glad I was raised to be aware of all that's around us, but my parents like, be happy with who you are.
Gotcha. Yeah. Avery, I saw you had your hand up, and anyone else, please use the raise hand feature and we will try and get your comment.
I was just gonna add that there was an article I read like some years back, and it mentioned that there's some correlation with attraction and leadership. Like people are more likely to vote for someone who's more attractive, or like some people even argue like the whole Obama comparison, in the sense that Obama was a very charismatic, well, just like he fit the presidential part. And I think that also contributes to this whole colorism when you talk about professionally and academically. I've known that even as a Black man in the workplace, I'm not necessarily, like, I'm also sexualized. And they, you know, like the idea of just me being there and being physically there, but I may not be respected in terms of my maybe intelligence or my education, but more so like, okay, yeah, he graduated or whatever. But I'm more so in that setting, you know, they like me more, not because of my education, but more for the fact that like I might be attractive to them. So I just wanted to add that, but I also wanted to add to the conversation. When it comes to like the colorism thing, I know a girl that I used to date who she fit the light skin. She would be the queen of the light skin. Sometimes I'm even referred to as a king of the light skin. She was the queen of the light skin in the sense of she had the natural hair. She had like greenish eyes, but she was a Black woman. And oftentimes I know growing up, I used to always be asked, what am I? Because people will always say like, you can't just be Black. You have to be mixed with something. You know, growing up in the Bronx, people thought that you're Puerto Rican or you're Dominican. I used to lie. I'm Panamanian. Like, if that's what you like, then I'll be that. But as I gotten older, I started to accept the fact that Black can be beautiful by itself. But a lot of, like, especially with little girls, I know some little girls or that are adults now that have always been told that they were beautiful at a young age. But then I also know some little girls that have always been told that they're smart. You're smart. You know, so it's like I think as older, somebody said, what are some of the actionable items that we can do today? Now that we're stepping into these roles, we have to start to you know, the way that we speak to one another, the way that we speak to our little kids, our little daughters specifically, and our little boys as well. But yeah, we have to just start changing the way that we communicate and how we define beauty and Blackness, Black beauty, all of that.
Thank you. Before we go to Rob, I just want to make a quick announcement. I just want to urge everyone to be mindful of the timer. We have a lot of thoughts and we want to make sure we get to everyone. Rob, go ahead.
I want to skip the story. Pierre talks about what to do to move forward, and I want to highlight the importance of doing the internal work, the internal bias work. And for me, like, if I'm talking to anyone, I'm saying that's sitting in the uncomfortable place. And that's for all of us, like sitting in the uncomfortable place of our feelings and asking the why until we can go as far back as we can absolutely exhaust. That is how we can talk about the difference between whether it's colorism or preference. And somebody said in the chat, I thought it was wonderful. Like, you have to spend time asking yourself, why? Why do you like that? Okay, when did that come up? Okay, when you start to think about it. And only then can we really begin the process of dismantling it. It does take research. It does take reading, but all of that can be negated because we can all find books to support our bias if we don't even know it, because that bias still exists internally. It's unconscious. So I do believe it's important to spend time in the uncomfortable place that is our emotions and feelings, our own history, family histories. I mean, I grew up with a gentleman who was like a father figure, but he appeared white. And I remember listening to my mom tell me about how upset he is. My stepdad now is Black, but he is light skinned. And if you were ever to meet him, you would go, oh, he's got to be mixed with something. And I guess that's the place I speak from, because knowing of persons within our community who are ostracized on the other end of things, but really it's because of the hurt that we've experienced because of where we are that we, you know, maybe target them. So that's my spend time in the uncomfortable place.
Okay, I hear you. Just a reminder, guys, I wish we had all the time in the world, but we actually have 3 to 4 minutes left. So I'm gonna try and get the last wrapping thoughts. Don, you have your hand raised. And Lexi, I kind of want to hear from you in this conversation. Don, go ahead. Please remember to unmute yourself.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I guess when I'm thinking about it a little bit more, there's many isms that are used, I guess, to sort of separate us or create division among us, whether you're from another country, whether you're from the Bronx, Brooklyn, there's always an ism that creates conflict within our culture, and even within the faith. There's greater and there's northeastern, there's always something created to make a separation. So we should always be mindful that we have to really see people for who they are and try to accept people for who they are, I guess, instead of always looking on the surface.
So are you saying that you're acknowledging that there's colorism, you know, divisions, you mentioned the church division, but we have to just push past these things. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it does exist, but we need to move above that, because at the end, we're all human. And those of us who are striving to do better need to rise above those things. Even though these things exist, like, let's just say us in this group, we're not subscribing to that, but we don't just live inside of this group. We have to deal with the reality that surrounds us.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. I think it's also important to have these conversations and discussions. I as much as we would all love to push past it, it's not that easy. And so I think, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I feel like we still have to acknowledge that these things are plaguing our community. And so we're not going to be able to be in positions where we can push past it unless we really dissect it and understand the pockets that exist within these complex systems. Alexia, I'm interested in hearing what have your thoughts been throughout this conversation tonight?
Pardon?
We're gonna end on you.
Okay, I think this conversation has been amazing. I thank everybody for like just sharing their personal experiences and really being honest and vulnerable in what they've experienced. But just to really quickly comment on what Dom is saying, I think first we have to identify where we are. We have to be aware of where we are and how we impact each other, right? And that's the only way we can learn, unlearn, and move forward with things. It's not just, oh, I care for people and I don't see anything else. I just want to love people, and then it's somehow gonna eradicate what the issues are. We have to really identify them, look at them, and face them. It may be uncomfortable to do, but it's a part of the process. So that's, for me, it's a very problematic thought process, and we have that in the churches as well. We have that in different facets of in our different facets of communities, and that's something that we really need to unpack. Just from my experience, although we don't necessarily directly in the Caribbean deal with direct racism or structural racism, we have colorism there. That's like our version, our version of the racism. And you see it when the guys talk about the uptown girls and the downtown girls. Uptown girls are the lighter skinned girls. They had proper education. They speak more of the Queen's language. The downtown girls are the darkest skin. They didn't get the opportunities like they got. And it's not like, it seemed they didn't actually get the opportunity. Their schools are kind of like here. The schools are they don't have the same opportunities. They don't have the same education. So even within our societies, when Caribbean men say, I just love women, I don't see this, or it's not necessarily a preference, I would challenge them to really look at that and really unpack what that means, because before you, there was a whole history, and you have to look at where you were taught and who you were taught. We're all shaped by our experiences in life. So to think that this is because of what I really think, I think you really need to unpack that thought process. It's been from the things that you have been taught by your family, what you've seen, what they have seen from generation to generation. So I think this is a start. This is a part of the work. I think that we have to get we have to build these spaces, like, here at F.L.O.W, we try to build these spaces to have these conversations, and a part of these conversations are going to be uncomfortable, and we have to be okay with being in these uncomfortable spaces. But I think a part of that is hearing what I don't want to mispronounce your name. He was talking about in terms of listening to people and listening to their experiences. That is very critical. And having compassion for people when they're sharing their experiences, not just being mindful of what our triggers are and not just coming down with the iron fist with people, but having compassion, the fact that they're having the conversation, but also being able to correct them in a way that they're able to hear you and digest what you're saying.
I'm almost angry at myself for ending on you, Alexia, because I feel like you brought so much that we could expand on and unpack. But thank you for your I'm also grateful that I ended on you as well, because I think you did add a nice finishing touch. But guys, I want to thank everyone for joining in. If only we had more time, we would go on for hours, but I want to say thank you to our panelists. Thank you to those who came in on the end, and stay tuned next week. We're talking about gender roles. I know that's going to be a hot topic, especially with everything that's going on today in present day in modern times. So yeah, join us back at 4:30 next week here at the F.L.O.W channel, and we will be talking about gender roles. So all right, guys, have a good evening.